Welcome to Stuff They Didn't Teach Me in Sunday School. To put today's discussion into perspective, think about this. 400 years ago, the Jamestown colony in Virginia was just coming into existence. What if we skipped from the Jamestown colony to the 21st century and tried to understand the 21st century without understanding all those intervening years? Basically, that's what we're doing between Genesis and Exodus. There's about a 400-year gap there with no history recorded, but we know this. During that time, these 70 people that went down to Egypt with Jacob and his family, the family numbering a total of 70, has now grown to a nation of about 3 million. We have a cryptic line that appears in Exodus chapter 1, verse 8. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And we're inclined to go, well, yeah, it's 400 years later. Of course he didn't know Joseph. We aren't sure exactly what that means, but here's a possible scenario. We know that there was a time period in Egypt's history when foreign rulers took over the rule of the nation. They were called the Hyksos rulers, H-Y-K-S-O-S. Hyksos rulers took over the rule of the nation. It would have been probably a prime time for Joseph to come to power as another foreigner with foreign rulers in place. In that case, perhaps this line that says, now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph, reflects on a time period after the Hyksos rulers when the Egyptians themselves threw off the foreign rulers and put their own pharaohs back on the throne. And so you have a dynasty with no allegiance at all to the nation of Israel. That's all by way of introducing a dilemma. A nation that began as 70 people has now become a nation of about 3 million, and they live in the Nile Delta area, and these new pharaohs are worried. They're worried that if an invader comes, that the Hebrews will not help Egypt repel the invader, but will join the invaders. And so they undertake some population control measures. The first one is in verse 13. So they made the people of Israel serve with rigor and made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar and brick and all kinds of work in the field. In all their work they made them serve with rigor. The theory here is that if you're more tired from all your work, reproduction won't be high on your list of things to do when you get home. It doesn't work that way. They had more kids. The second attempt at birth control. Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah. I want to look these ladies up in heaven because I think they're kind of cool. When you serve as midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it's a son, you shall kill him, but if it's a daughter, you shall live. And apparently, these midwives were supposed to make the Hebrew mothers believe that the boys that they gave birth to were stillborn and that the girls they gave birth to were healthy. We're told in verse 17, but the midwives feared God, did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. So the king of Egypt called the midwives and said to them, why have you done this? And let the male children live. Midwives said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and are delivered before the midwife comes to them. In other words, they call the midwife, I get there, the child's already born. I can't go strangle a kid that's already there at his mother's breast. Now, whether they're telling the Pharaoh the truth or not, I don't know. We might have to wait to get to heaven to ask them that. But their argument is they're not like Egyptian women. They're tough. And they're giving birth without any help, and we don't have an opportunity to do what you told us to do. So Pharaoh tries one more method of birth control. Every son that's born to the Hebrews you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live. And so now they're taking the Hebrew boys and throwing them in the Nile. You know the story. I don't know if you appreciate the irony of it from your Sunday school lesson. Moses is born, and they throw him into the Nile too. Only they throw him into the Nile in a basket and float that basket by the Pharaoh's daughter. And she takes this young Hebrew child, adopts him, looks for a wet nurse, finds his mother, and allows his mother to raise him until he's weaned, and then Moses is raised in Pharaoh's house, in the royal palace. God has a plan for this young man. Part of it involves being able to move in royal society in the nation of Egypt. He would need that down the line. But at this time, God has saved him through water. Might also be a glimpse at the concept of baptism to come in the New Testament. God is at work for the good of his people, for the salvation of his people. God is still a God of grace, and he's going to make sure that these people end up where he wants them to end up, how he wants them to be.